The diner lights flickered softly in the early gray of morning, half-empty booths glowing under tired fluorescence, the air thick with the scent of burnt toast and fresh rain. Outside, the sky threatened another downpour. Inside, it was quiet, except for the soft clink of cups and the low murmur of country radio drifting from an old speaker above the grill. Katie wiped her hands on her apron and moved toward table 6. A man sat alone, shoulders heavy under a faded denim jacket. Across from him, a little girl with tangled blonde pigtails clutched a stuffed rabbit and stared longingly at the pie display. Their cups sat empty. Their plates were still untouched. Katie didn't ask. She just smiled, softly, the way someone does when they've seen enough hard days themselves, and slid 2 fresh coffees onto the table. One with cream, one black. The kind of gesture that feels small until it's everything. The man looked up, eyes rimmed red. He opened his mouth, but no words came. "It's on me," she said gently, already turning back toward the counter. No rush. She didn't know his story. She didn't know hers was about to change. Sometimes, kindness finds its way back in ways we never expect. Before we dive into this story, make sure to like the video and hit that subscribe button for more amazing stories. Katie turned away from table 6, her sneakers whispering across the linoleum. Heart already moving on to the next task. That man didn't know her thanks. She hadn't done anything special. Just a cup of coffee. Behind the counter, Marlene, older, sharp-eyed, with a voice like gravel, watched with a tight smirk as Katie refilled the carafe. "You're gonna go broke trying to rescue every sad pair that walks in here," Marlene muttered, sliding a fresh tray of biscuits into the warmer. "You think coffee grows on trees?" Katie didn't answer. She just offered a half-smile, poured more decaf, and turned to serve the next table. Marlene always had something to say. "Next time, ask if they can pay before you hand out freebies like you're some Mother Teresa," Marlene added under her breath, not loud enough to cause a scene, but just enough for table 6 to hear. The man's jaw tensed slightly. The little girl looked down, cheeks red. Katie felt her throat tighten, but she stayed calm, composed. She'd learned how to carry kindness quietly, even when it came with side eyes and judgment. Especially then. The lunch rush was still an hour away, and the morning lull was thick as honey. Table 6 hadn't ordered anything else. The man stared out the window, eyes scanning the storm-swollen streets, like he was trying to remember something he'd forgotten years ago. The little girl quietly colored on a napkin with a dull red crayon from the basket up front. Katie moved between tables with grace learned from repetition, her steps practiced, efficient. Behind her tired smile lived 1,000 unspoken sacrifices. She worked the early shift 6 days a week, up at 4:30 a.m. to take the bus across town. Rent didn't care if your feet hurt. Electricity didn't wait until tips were good. She remembered last Thursday, when she had to choose between a new pair of work shoes or milk for her son. She chose the milk and patched her old soles with duct tape. But she didn't wear her struggle. She folded it neat and tucked it deep where no one could see. The bell above the diner door jingled sharply. In walked him, Ray Franklin, manager. Tie too tight, temper even tighter. He wore confidence like armor and sarcasm like a second skin. He clapped his hands once, loud enough to make heads turn. "Katie, you giving out charity?" Again. Marlene laughed behind the counter, shaking her head. She bought their coffee. Ray narrowed his eyes at table 6. The man, gruff, quiet, with calloused hands and a stillness that felt like restraint, met Ray's stare without blinking. Ray stepped closer, lowering his voice just enough to keep the humiliation personal. "Look, sweetheart, we're not a soup kitchen. If someone can't pay, they shouldn't be sitting." Katie stood her ground. "It's just 2 coffees." Ray smirked. "That's 2 more than they paid for. And I don't see either of them reaching for a wallet." The little girl squeezed her bunny tighter. Katie glanced at her, then back at Ray. "You can take it out of my tips." "Oh, I will," Ray said, turning to walk away. "But that ain't the point. Don't go turning this place into your personal charity project. You want to be Florence Nightingale, do it on your own time." The man spoke for the first time, voice low and steady. "You always talk to your staff like that." Ray turned, half laughing. "And you always let your kid eat on someone else's dime." The tension in the air coiled tight. Katie stepped between them, but the man didn't rise. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. She's got more dignity than most people I've met, he said quietly, nodding at Katie. And more heart. For a beat, no one spoke. Then he reached into his coat. Ray folded his arms. Oh sure, now the wallet comes out. But what he pulled out wasn't a wallet. It was a checkbook. And he began writing. Slowly, carefully, deliberately. Katie watched, frozen. His pen scratched across the paper in a way that didn't match his worn-out boots or weathered jacket. He tore the check free and handed it to Katie. For the coffee, he said. And for the way you made my daughter feel safe this morning. Katie looked down. Her eyes widened. Her breath caught. She blinked, unsure she was reading it right. Ray craned his neck. What's it say? Katie didn't speak. She just folded the check and slid it quietly into her apron pocket. The man stood, gathering his daughter's coat. We won't take up more space, he said gently, helping the little girl into her boots. Before he left, he turned once more to Katie. I lost my wife 6 months ago, he said softly. This morning was hard. You didn't know? But you didn't need to. Then he tipped his hat, gave a small nod, and walked out into the rain with his daughter's hand in his. Ray scoffed. Guy's probably bluffing. Katie said nothing. She felt the folded paper in her pocket like a heartbeat. Later, in the back near the kitchen, she pulled it out. $10,000. Signed in full. No mistake. No catch. And beneath the signature, a name she recognized, Thomas Halston, founder of Halston Automotive. Quiet. Private. Reportedly worth millions. She'd poured him a cup of coffee like he was just another man trying to weather the day. Because that's how she saw him. Because that's how she saw everyone. The next morning, Ray didn't say much. But he didn't question Katie's choices again. And the coffee that day? It tasted just a little sweeter. It was just after sunrise the next day. The diner smelled of sizzling bacon and fresh coffee, but the usual rhythm felt off. People whispered more than they spoke. Heads turned when Katie walked past. Even Marlene kept quiet, barely meeting her eyes. Ray hadn't said a word all morning. He hovered by the register, pretending to count receipts that didn't need counting. His jaw was tighter than usual. Katie moved between tables like always, refilling mugs, balancing plates on her arm, offering warm smiles to folks who barely looked up from their phones. But something had shifted. Not in how she walked, but in how others watched her. When the bell above the door jingled again, the quiet cracked. In stepped him. Thomas Halston. Same worn denim jacket. Same calm eyes. But this time, no one mistook him. A man in a charcoal gray suit followed close behind, holding a sleek briefcase and scanning the room like he was mentally measuring every inch of it. Behind them, the little girl from yesterday peeked out, holding her bunny tight, but smiling this time, wide and bright, like something had been lifted from her chest. Ray straightened fast, his voice stumbling out. Mr. Halston, sir, I didn't know you were. Thomas held up a hand. I'm not here for you. He turned toward Katie. You got a minute? Katie glanced around. The counter was full, but no one dared interrupt. She nodded. Thomas motioned toward booth 2. She followed, wiping her hands on her apron. They sat. The diner hushed to a dull hum. People still eating, but no one really chewing. Just watching. Thomas leaned forward, folding his hands on the table. I've been looking for someone. Katie blinked, unsure. Me? No, he said gently. Someone like you. That made her pause. He continued, voice low but firm. People think success comes from ideas or money, but I've learned it comes from character, from doing the right thing when no one's watching, from choosing kindness even when it costs you. Katie said nothing, but her eyes began to soften, cautiously. I built a company from scratch, he went on. Then I lost the only person who kept me grounded in it. My wife. When she died, I stopped seeing people. I saw numbers, profits, performance. Until yesterday, his eyes met hers. You saw us. Not what we looked like. Not what we could afford. You didn't wait to be thanked or noticed. You just did what was right. He reached into his coat and placed a folded letter on the table. Katie looked at it, but didn't move. I'm reopening our community development branch, he said. Real investment in real people. I need someone who understands what that means. Someone who's lived it. She stared at the letter, still unmoving. I want you to manage it. Her brow creased. I don't have a degree. I've never. Thomas smiled. You've done more with a coffee pot and a smile than most people with 3 diplomas. I'll teach you the rest. You already have what matters. A silence settled. Katie's fingers trembled as she touched the envelope. She opened it slowly. Inside, an official offer. A full-time salary. Health insurance. Paid training. A leadership title. And a handwritten note beneath it. Let them see what I saw. TH. Across the diner, Marlene stopped wiping the counter. Ray stood frozen. No one said a word. Katie folded the letter and stood up. She turned to Thomas, voice quiet but sure. Thank you. He nodded once, then rose with her. The little girl ran to Katie and hugged her waist tight. Katie bent down, brushing the girl's hair gently from her eyes. You two take care of each other, she whispered. Then she turned toward the counter. Ray looked at her, somewhere between regret and disbelief. I'll finish my shift, she said calmly. That's who I am. And she did. Every refill, every plate, every smile. Not because she had to, because she chose to. The next Thursday morning started like all the others. Quiet lights spilling through the blinds, the hiss of the griddle, and the comforting clatter of mugs stacked behind the counter. Katie tied her apron, pulled her hair back with a simple clip, and greeted the early regulars with that same tired warmth she wore like armor. But beneath the hum of the diner, something was different. A black SUV sat outside, idling at the curb. No one had ever seen a car like that in front of Lonnie's Grill, not with tinted windows and a clean shine like it had never touched a gravel road. Inside, Ray tapped his pen anxiously on the register. Marlene chewed her gum slower than usual, eyes darting from the window to Katie like she was trying to fit puzzle pieces together. Katie didn't notice. Or maybe she did, and just didn't care. She was helping Mrs. Callahan at table 4, pouring decaf with one hand and listening to the story of a runaway cat for the third time that month. When the door opened, a gust of wind rolled in with Thomas Halston. He wasn't alone. 2 associates walked in behind him. One held a briefcase. The other, a portfolio folder clutched to his chest. The diner fell into a hush that wasn't asked for, but happened anyway. Like the air knew. Something was about to change. Ray straightened his spine and smoothed his tie, voice half-cocked. Welcome back, Mr. Halston. If I'd known you were coming, Thomas didn't stop walking. He headed straight for Katie. She turned, coffee pot still in hand. Thomas smiled, genuinely, deeply. I hope I'm not interrupting your flow. Katie blinked, but kept her voice steady. You're fine. I'm used to multitasking. Thomas nodded, then motioned to the man with the folder. He stepped forward, opened the case, and placed a single document on the counter. Katie leaned forward slowly. The heading read, Proposal for the Halston Community Center, Regional Director, Katie L. Marsh. Her hands froze. Marlene stepped in, brow furrowed. Wait her. Ray's eyebrows shot up. Director? There must be a mistake. Thomas turned slightly, addressing the room without raising his voice. No mistake, he said. I've spent 6 months visiting projects across this region, talking to community leaders, educators, even small business owners. But no one impressed me more than the woman who offered me coffee without asking for anything in return. He looked directly at Katie. She didn't see a man with money. She saw a father in need. She gave when she had little. She led with compassion when no one was watching. He paused, then added, And leadership, real leadership, doesn't come from titles. It comes from choices. Katie looked around, at the stunned silence, the wide eyes, the mouths slowly closing as realization set in. For the first time, they saw it too. She had always been steady, patient, strong. But now, she was seen. Ray stepped forward, voice cracking. But, she's a waitress. Katie finally spoke. Clear, calm, unshaken. Yes, I am. I've worked here for 6 years. Opened this diner every morning but Sundays. Held 2 jobs at once to pay for my son's school shoes. Learned to stretch a $20 tip into 4 meals. I know what it means to build something from nothing. I know how to listen when someone's hurting, and how to stand my ground when no one else will. She turned to Thomas. And if you trust me with this, I'll give it everything I've got. He smiled. That's all I ever needed to hear. The man with the briefcase placed a pen gently on the counter. Katie picked it up, hands no longer shaking. She signed. It was quiet, eerily so. No applause. No outbursts. Just reverence. A kind of stillness that settles when truth enters the room. Marlene swallowed hard. Her gaze dropped. Ray looked like he'd just watched the roof blow off the building. Katie untied her apron and folded it slowly, with care, like she was closing a chapter. She set it on the counter, smoothed the edges. I'm finishing my shift, she said softly. One last morning. For me. Thomas nodded, respect in his eyes. We'll be waiting. As he left, he paused just before the door. One more thing, he added. This community center? It's being built a block from here. And it's going to feed families, train workers, support single parents. He looked right at Ray, thanks to Katie's vision. Then he stepped out into the sunlight. Katie poured another cup of coffee at table 4, as if nothing had changed. But everything had. The morning rush slowed. People lingered in their booths longer than usual. Conversations hushed, as if the very walls of Lonnie's grill had soaked up something sacred and were still, holding their breath. Katie moved through the diner with the same steady grace as always, refilling cups, clearing plates, offering a gentle smile to a tired mother or a nod to an old-timer who'd been coming there since before she ever put on an apron. But something had changed. Not in her. In them. Marlene stood behind the counter, drying the same mug for nearly 10 minutes. She didn't chew her gum, didn't mutter anything under her breath. Just watched Katie like she was seeing her. For the first time, not as the girl who clocked in early and stayed late, but as a woman who'd carried a whole world on her shoulders and never once dropped it. Ray hadn't moved from the register. He stared out the window at the spot where Thomas Halston's SUV had parked, then turned slowly toward the counter where Katie folded her apron. Just moments earlier, she walked past him to table 6, the same booth where the millionaire had once sat with his grieving daughter and a crumpled dollar bill between them. She wiped the table clean without a word. Ray cleared his throat. Twice. Then again. Katie, he said finally. She stopped. Turned. He looked different. Smaller, somehow. Not in stature, but in posture. Like something had been knocked loose inside him, and he wasn't sure how to hold it. I didn't know who he was, Ray said. Katie tilted her head, polite but unmoved. Didn't matter to me. He hesitated. You've been here a long time. You've done a lot more than I ever gave you credit for. She let the silence hang there for a beat. Not to punish him, just to let it settle. I wasn't doing it for credit. Ray nodded slowly, rubbing the back of his neck. Yeah, I see that now. He looked around the diner, the chipped counters, the scuffed booths, the faces that had all turned toward Katie over the last hour like sunflowers following the sun. If you ever wanted to come back, he said, his voice quieter now, we'd be lucky to have you. Maybe in management. Or training. Anything you want. Katie smiled, kind but firm. I've got a lot to build now. He looked down. Right. Of course. No anger. No tension. Just truth. As she turned to go, Marlene spoke up behind the counter. Katie. Katie looked over. Marlene stepped forward, wiping her hands nervously on a dish towel. Her voice wasn't sharp anymore. It was soft, uncertain in a way that made it human. My nephew, he's been struggling to find work. Keeps getting told he doesn't have leadership potential. She paused. Do you think your new place might be hiring? Katie nodded gently. Tell him to stop by the site next week. We'll be holding interviews. Marlene nodded, her jaw tightening just a bit to keep emotion from escaping. Thank you. At table 3, an older man Katie had served for years, Mr. Hopkins, who always paid in quarters and never smiled, raised his hand slowly. She walked over. He didn't look up, just slid a $5 bill toward her. For the coffee, he said, from 2 weeks ago, when I forgot my wallet. You didn't make a big deal, but I remembered. Katie took the bill and squeezed his hand lightly. Glad you came back. By the time she returned to the counter, a young woman, one of the newer servers, approached her with wide, uncertain eyes. Ms. Marsh, she said quietly. Can I ask you something? Katie smiled. You don't need to call me that. I don't know how you stay so calm. Even when people are harsh. Even when it's not fair. Katie looked at the girl, maybe 19, barely holding herself together after a week on the job, and placed a hand gently on her arm. You just remember why you're doing it, she said. If you know who you are, nobody else gets to decide your worth. The girl nodded, eyes glassy. The clock hit noon. The diner filled with light, and the day moved forward, but slower, gentler. Something had changed. Katie stepped out onto the sidewalk, the sun warming her face. She turned her face upward for a second, just breathing. just being. Behind her, through the glass, Ray and Marlene and half a dozen patrons watched her go, not with envy, not with confusion, but with a kind of quiet reverence. They had always underestimated her. Not anymore. The old rec center on Maple and Ninth used to sit forgotten. Peeling paint, cracked windows, a sagging roof that wept every time it rained. Most people passed it without looking twice. But not anymore. 6 months had passed since that morning at the diner. And now, the building pulsed with life. Kids' laughter echoed off freshly painted walls. Sunlight poured through tall, clean windows. The scent of sawdust had been replaced by fresh paper, warm coffee, and hope. At the front of the lobby, just beneath a hand-carved wooden sign that read Halston Community Center, stood a welcome desk. A vase of sunflowers. A bulletin board filled with job postings, tutoring schedules, and support group flyers. And right in the middle of it all, Katie Marsh. She didn't sit in an office tucked away behind glass. Her desk was open, central, feet from the door. That was by choice. Every morning she got there early, just like she had at the diner. She brewed the first pot of coffee herself, took time to greet the janitor, the volunteers, the new parents with questions in their eyes and exhaustion in their bones. To some, she was the director, but to everyone else, she was home base. In the main hall, teens lined up for resume coaching. In the next room, a single father practiced reading aloud with his son. Upstairs, a woman who had once slept in her car now ran the kitchen training program. And in the community garden out back, where there used to be weeds and rusted bike frames, fresh tomatoes climbed wooden stakes, and toddlers ran barefoot in the grass. Katie moved through it all like a steady breeze. Never rushing, never raising her voice, but always watching, always listening. She didn't wear a name tag anymore. Didn't need one. Everyone knew who she was. One afternoon, a young woman approached her after a financial literacy workshop. She was nervous, arms crossed, backpack slung over one shoulder like she might run at any second. "You used to work at a diner, right?" the girl asked, almost disbelieving. Katie smiled. "I did. But how did you get here?" Katie paused. Her voice stayed soft. "By knowing who I was, before anyone else did." The girl didn't respond right away, but she stayed. And that was enough. On a Friday, Marlene showed up with a tray of cookies and a hand-knit scarf in a paper bag. She muttered something about wanting to volunteer in the reading room if they ever needed someone who wasn't all soft. Katie hugged her, gently, without needing her to explain more. Ray came by too. Not with an apology, he'd already given that months ago, but with a donation envelope from the diner. "We're collecting tips for school supplies," he said awkwardly. "Heard you're starting a scholarship fund." Katie looked at him, then nodded. "Every dollar helps." He smiled faintly. "Didn't think I'd say this, but you running this place feels right." On the wall just inside the front door, framed in wood and hung with care, was the original check. $10,000. Signed by Thomas Halston. Still crisp. Still powerful. Below it, a small plaque read, "To those who lead with quiet courage." You built this, Katie. She never pointed it out to visitors. But people noticed. Especially the ones who needed it most. One evening, long after the rooms had emptied and the lights had dimmed, Katie sat alone on the steps out front. The breeze was warm. The city buzzed softly in the distance, but here, on this block, it was calm. She looked out over the garden, where solar lights blinked gently like fireflies. A little girl and her father walked by on the sidewalk. He held her hand, and she held a stuffed bunny, worn at the ears. Katie smiled. She knew them. She remembered that booth. That storm. That moment everything shifted. But she didn't dwell there. Not anymore. Because this was the future she was building now. Rooted in that one small act. A cup of coffee. A gesture of grace. A choice to see someone fully, without needing anything in return. Thank you so much for joining us today. That's it for today's heartwarming story. We hope it brought a little light to your day. If it touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Proud Stories if you believe in the power of kindness. We'll see you in the next story. Until then, be kind to everyone. Take care, and see you soon.